Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening.
What are you afraid of? I'm not ashamed. Elliot didn't seem to mind, and he wanted everyone to see it. Anastasia simply allowed him to do what he wanted. After all, she had to admit that he was quite brazen. Are you tired? Would you like a massage from your husband? He asked in a hushed tone. I'm fine. I enjoy working, she answered as she shifted her head to look at him with eyes that sparkled with enthusiasm. Elliot was content when he saw how happy she was. Then, he acknowledged, you can work for as long as you wish. Just don't exert yourself. Anastasia scrunched up her nose playfully and replied, I know. Don't worry about me. He then released her and took 2 steps back before checking her from head to toe. She felt a little bashful when he observed her in this manner because it made her feel like he was admiring a piece of art. What are you looking at? This made him grin before he said, your outfit is making me have wild thoughts. She immediately narrowed her gaze at him. Do not try anything silly at the office. When Elliot heard this, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. Does this mean I can do whatever I want when we get home? Anastasia didn't know what to say, so she gave him a shy, angry look, but she was still happy in her heart that he wanted her so much. Then, she said in a low voice, we'll see. Did Mason look for you? Elliot inquired as he drew a chair for himself and took a seat before he gracefully crossed his long and slender legs. Only then did Anastasia realize the reason for his visit. Was he jealous? How could someone be so easily jealous? Yeah, we had a little chat, she said truthfully. When he heard this, his eyes lit up with jealousy. What did you two discuss? He wanted my help to secure an endorsement contract for his sister. I agreed. Elliot blinked when he heard this. I see. Then, Anastasia got up, closed the shutters, walked over to him, and sat on his lap. Even though he enjoyed that she took the initiative, it caught him by surprise. She cradled his face in her hands as she bent her head to plant a kiss on his lips. She had learned certain skills from him and now, she was going to give him a taste of his own medicine by using those techniques on him. Elliot enjoyed her kissing him and placed his arms around her waist. She withdrew just as he was going to get more and she whispered in his ears, you shouldn't be jealous anymore, honey. Other than you, there is no one else in my heart. This caught him off guard and he narrowed his eyes in affectionate response to her gaze. Then, he wrapped his arms tightly around her and said, all right, I'm not jealous. I won't be jealous any longer. Just as Anastasia was about to move away from his lap, he quickly restrained her. Are you leaving now after teasing me? Anastasia's cheeks were still flushed from initiating the kiss, but the man won't release his grip. In the next instant, he grasped the back of her head and gave her a passionate kiss. Elliot's affections for her grew stronger over time. At that moment, Grace wanted to give Anastasia some important documents, so she rushed in without knocking. She was shocked by what she saw and her face blushed due to her being shy, which resulted in her fleeing the scene. The scene inside the room was not appropriate for young folks. Anastasia pushed the man away and Elliot left with a satisfied look. When Grace returned, Anastasia smiled and puckered her lips. Do not tell anyone what happened just now. Grace, of course, didn't dare. However, it looked like she had changed her mind about Anastasia, who had become more gutsy. I won't dare to. Don't worry, President Tillman, Grace answered thoughtfully. At the hospital, Sophia walked out to get some fruits for her dad. She had just returned and was making her way toward the entrance of the ward when she heard her father's anxious voice coming through the open door. Please don't tell Sophia anything about this. Do not land her in such stress. The bank has been pressuring us daily, though. If you do not repay them, you will have no other option. We need to think of something. Tiana sighed. We'll see what it takes. If there's nothing else I can do, I'll just go to jail for 2 years, Drake commented. You can't do that. What should I do when you're gone? The York family was interested in our Sophia and is willing to pay off your debts. Why don't we just let Sophia? No way. The last time that happened, Sophia fled the country. Drake was distressed on behalf of his daughter. It's $1 billion. Where are we going to get that money? Whatever it is, I wouldn't let you head back to prison. If you do, I don't want to live anymore. Sophia almost dropped the fruits in her hands. What? Dad owes the bank $1 billion? And as long as I agree to marry Christopher, his family would help Dad pay off his debt? However, she was very grateful for Christopher. After she had fled to avoid their marriage the last time, he still wanted her. Now that his family was offering to help, what more could she ask for? At this moment, she pushed open the door and interrupted the arguing couple. Dad, Mom, I've heard everything, so you can stop arguing now. I'll do it. I'll marry Christopher. Sophia. The couple looked back at their daughter's determined face as they were stunned. As long as I can pay Dad's debts, as long as Dad doesn't go to jail, I'm willing to do anything, Sophia exclaimed with reddened eyes. She had been unfilial as she didn't know that her family was facing such a big crisis. Sophia, there's no rush. Drake was about to assure her when he was interrupted. Dad, it's okay. I'm willing to marry Christopher. I'm okay, Sophia insisted as she sniffed. After saying that, she put the fruits down on the table before turning to leave the ward. Outside, she found Christopher's number and dialed it. A gruff male voice sounded. Hello, who is this? I'm Sophia Goodwin. Sophia? Is this really you? My dream girl has finally decided to reach out to me. The voice on the other end was ecstatic. I'm prepared to marry you, but can you really help my father with his debts? As long as you marry me, your father will be like my own father. I will help him pay off his debt immediately, Christopher promised. Okay, then. Then, let's find a time to meet. That's up to you. I am abroad now. I'll come back on Friday, and I'll pick you up when we've set a date. Great. After she hung up the phone, she sighed as Arthur's face flashed across her mind. At this moment, in a resort abroad, Christopher was basking his 200-pound body in the sun. The towel wrapped around him could barely cover his waist. Young Master Christopher, are you really going to marry Sophia Goodwin and pay off Drake's debt? Sophia is the woman I've always wanted. Of course, I won't be so naive. I'll pay the initial down payment first. After she marries me, she'll be my wife. By then, she'll have to listen to me. Then, it'd be up to me to decide whether I really finish paying off her father's debt or not, Christopher explained with a smile, making a shrewd calculation. A new group of criminals had just been sent to the women's prison in Averna. A woman who was wiping the greasy tabletop raised her head and looked up at the people who were swarming in for lunch. Then, she stopped wiping and looked carefully before she quickly turned her back, afraid that someone would recognize her. The woman was Haley. She was in a gray scrub and had her hair trimmed to her ears. She had been here for almost a month now and had nearly severed all contact from the outside world. However, she did not expect to meet her acquaintance here. Among the people that came in earlier, she knew one of them, Erica Tillman. She had the same haircut as Haley and wore the same clothes, so it was obvious that Erica was sent to serve in prison. Currently, Erica looked haggard and pale. Back then, she was treated like a princess. Now, she was forced to eat things she had never eaten before. The food served here wasn't even served to her servants back at home, but she had no choice. It was as if she was getting her karma served to her. Although she had gone through her initial remorse till her current awakening, it was too late. She would have to spend the second half of her life here as she was serving over 10 years of imprisonment. Erica was quietly eating her rock-solid steamed buns and some rancid noodles when she heard a sharp voice yelling, "Haley, what are you doing? Get back to work." Right then, Erica froze in her place. She raised her head and looked in the direction of the voice and saw a familiar figure. Although the woman had deliberately turned her back toward her, Erica could still recognize her at a glance. Haley Seymour. A sudden gush of anger was suddenly ignited in Erica's heart because in her eyes, Haley was despicable and shameless. She had blatantly stolen Erica's man and fed her with negative thoughts that ruined her life. Erica thereafter grabbed the soup on the side and walked toward Haley. All this while, Haley had her head lowered in an attempt to avoid Erica recognizing her. However, at this moment, she turned around when she heard the approaching footsteps and a bowl of cold soup was immediately splashed across her face. Ah! Haley was struggling to open her eyes when she was slapped hard across the face in the next second. As if the slap wasn't enough, Erica started screaming while reaching out to pull her hair. "Haley Seymour, you be *TCH. I'm going to kill you. Erica Tillman, let me go." Haley's scalp began to burn with pain and 2 correctional officers came over at this moment to separate the two and give them their fair share of scolding. Haley's face was filled with disgust as she wiped her face. As she had gone through several plastic surgeries, the lumps on her forehead were prominent. "Haha. Look at your face. You look like a witch. It's disgusting." Erica sat down and mocked Haley, who went back to wiping the table. Hearing this, Haley sneered. "And I'll continue to disgust you. We'll have to see each other for more than 10 years anyway. Anastasia is a gem now and known as Mrs. Pressgrave. Do you know that she and Elliot are married? She is also the eldest daughter of the Tillman family. As for you, you are just a piece of trash by the side of the road while she is dazzling like a diamond." Erica bit her lips. Of course, she couldn't tell Haley how she really felt because of her envy toward Anastasia. However, right now, she couldn't even have the freedom she desired the most. What was the use of being jealous? Alex is also sentenced. We're all ruined. None of us will live a good life, Haley continued as she sat across Erica to rest. Erica's eyes darkened at the sound of this. Her parents were jailed and she herself was imprisoned. At the end of the day, had she ever regretted her capriciousness and malice? She was filled with remorse. If she had been given another chance, she would have never destroyed herself to this extent. She would find an average man to marry, have a child together with him, and be a good wife. "There's no use regretting," Haley commented as if she could read Erica's mind. Then, Erica raised her head and asked, "I still have no idea how you got thrown in here." Haley had no intention of hiding it from Emily. For her, those days were the happiest time of her life. "Did you know? That year, when we were plotting against Anastasia, it wasn't a gigolo who entered the room. It was Elliot Pressgrave. After Elliot handed her a watch, she then left it on the ground. Then, the waiter contacted me and gave me that watch." Haley clearly remembered the day when Elliot came to her store to look for her. He was dignified and exuded a masculine charm that made her fall in love with him at first sight. Erica's eyes widened as she prodded, "And then?" "5 years later, the business was so bad in my store that I had to sell the watch. A week later, Elliot returned to my store and asked whether I was the woman in the room that night. I said yes, a shameless Haley answered. After that, Erica scolded, "You are shameless. You would have done the same." Elliot said he was going to make amends. He gave me a big villa, a sports car, a black card with no limits, and a few servants. At that time, I was beautiful and happy. I could buy whatever I wanted. There would be nights where I get to dine with Elliot and go on jewelry exhibitions together. Speaking of this, Haley turned to Erica. Didn't I get you a few gifts that were worth more than $500,000? At this moment, Erica finally knew how Haley became a wealthy woman overnight. It turned out that she had stolen Anastasia's identity and took advantage of the compensation. And that's how I ended up here. I did that for about 7 months. I've spent $35 million of Elliot's money. In the end, I was tricked by Anastasia and I was charged with extortion. Then, Haley smiled bitterly and continued, "People say you can't have too much of a good thing because it'll eventually bite you in the back." And because of this, she was using the rest of her life to pay for her mistakes. Erica initially wanted to call out Haley for being insatiable and not knowing her boundaries. However, when Erica reflected on herself, she was also someone with blood on her hands. Instead, she said nothing for a while because she deserved to end up here. A financial summit was held in the city on Friday, and it was an event which the people of the financial industry took with seriousness. After reading the email, a woman sitting in the spacious office had a complicated look in her eyes. That woman was Lovestory Presgrave. Ever since her last meeting with Elliot, she had accepted his recommendation to work in another financial company. All this while, she had been restraining herself and waiting for the opportunity to show up. She did not dare to offend him and did not want to confront Anastasia in the open. Lovestory's father had been eyeing a project under Elliot's hands. Although her father wanted to get a hold of it, the Presgrave group had strict rules. They would rather cooperate with outsiders than the people of the Presgrave family, as this had been an unwritten rule of the Presgrave family. However, Lovestory's father wasn't the only one who had their eyes on the wealth of the Presgrave group. All of them were waiting for one thing. They patiently waited year after year while looking forward to Harriet's death. Once she was out of the picture, Elliot would be on his own. Without her strict defense, he might not be able to withstand the pressure of the entire family. Lovestory had been looking forward to this moment as she was confident that he would show up. At that time, Anastasia wouldn't be by his side, and Lovestory might be able to seize this chance to strike. She was confident in herself and did not believe there were men who wouldn't cheat. At Presgrave Group, Elliot had also received the invitation and accepted it. There were several companies that he was interested in cooperating with that were attending the summit this time. Anastasia had accompanied him to the company today. Bourgeois was implementing a reformation plan and had decided to buy a diamond mine and raw stones abroad. This was necessary as their company had decided to create a luxurious and customizable platform. 6 high-level executives of the company were gathered in the conference room. Anastasia sat on the main seat with her long hair on her shoulders while she listened to her subordinates' reports with firm, bright eyes and radiated the aura of a charismatic leader. It required a different kind of courage for one to be a leader, which was something that Anastasia had been exercising. As the Presgrave family had many extended family members, she had to shoulder the burden of being the lady boss of the family, and there would be more things that would require her to decide in the future. After the meeting, she called for Larry and carefully listened to his opinions. He was a senior executive of Bourgeois and was more experienced in this area. President Tillman, if we want Bourgeois to grow and be stronger, it is vital for us to have our own mine. Now, several big foreign brands have already begun to monopolize the stones. We will have to make a decision soon. What's the recovery rate for extraction? According to our current data, the recovery rate is within the acceptable range. However, this is something like a gamble. We would need luck to be on our side. Hearing this, Anastasia nodded. Okay, I'll decide in 3 days' time. Not long after Larry left, there was a knock on the door. to which she responded, "Come in." The person at the door was Katrina. She was at the company to sign a contract and came especially to thank Anastasia. "Anastasia, thank you for giving me this opportunity," she commented while failing to contain her excitement. "You should read through the terms and conditions of our contract. I hope that you will abide by it. You only get one chance. Please cherish it," Anastasia said. When Katrina heard this, she felt her heart tighten. The silent warning behind Anastasia's words pressured her, as her personal life was never smooth. "I know. I won't let you down." Then, Katrina added, "Please take care of my brother." "Definitely." Anastasia nodded. At this moment, Katrina's gaze wandered to the necklace Anastasia was wearing. She could tell at first glance that it was rare and valuable, and this caused envy to brew in her heart. "Anastasia, the diamonds on your neck are beautiful. It must cost millions," she said in jealousy. Anastasia pursed her lips and smiled. "My husband gave it to me. I didn't ask him about the price." At this moment, darkness flashed through Katrina's eyes. It would be great if she managed to seduce Elliot in the future. Now that she was endorsing Bourgeois, she had a higher chance of meeting him. "I'll make a move first." Katrina left as she did not want to disturb the woman. She took out her phone and began making a series of phone calls. "What's the matter?" asked the man on the other end. "I received Bourgeois endorsement, so how are you going to help me celebrate, young Master Jacob?" she asked proudly. "I'll pick a hotel to celebrate tonight," Jacob answered. Katrina cheerfully replied as she thought to herself, "His last name is Presgrave, but Jacob Presgrave is just another second-generation nouveau riche." In the evening, while she was being held in Jacob's arms, she voiced the questions that were going through her mind. "Jacob, you said you called Elliot Presgrave your cousin. Why is he extremely wealthy when your family is very low profile?" she asked. "You mean to say that our family has no money, right?" He snorted coldly. "Of course, your family is wealthier than the common people, but you can't compare to Elliot Presgrave," she exclaimed quickly. With a sigh of annoyance, Jacob remarked, "If old Madame Presgrave hadn't lived so long, we might have already been on the Presgrave Group's board of directors. My father stated that when the old woman passes away, our family would become wealthy sooner or later." "Really?" Katrina's eyes widened as she realized she couldn't afford to let him go in this situation. Once that old woman has passed away and Anastasia Tillman is the principal of the company, heck, what does she know? He sneered. She was still unconvinced. Why does Anastasia Tillman, who used to live in a rundown rented house abroad, now serve as president of Bourgeois and manage the company? She actually looked forward to the day Anastasia would have a run of bad luck, because it would definitely leave Katrina with loads of relief. Back at the hospital, 3 days flew past in what seemed like the blink of an eye while Sophia was there with her parents. She had forgotten something due to her father's debt, which was to return to Arthur Weiss's side. Therefore, she received a call from that man at that moment. "Hello. Please extend my leave for 2 more days, Mr. Weiss," she asked instead because she couldn't understand what the other party was saying. "What? Is your father in critical condition?" he inquired flatly. "My father still needs my assistance with a few things around here. I can't leave." "All right, I'll give you 2 more days," Arthur agreed politely. "Thank you." When Sophia thought of something, she exhaled a sigh of relief before uttering, "Mr. Weiss." He reacted in a low voice. "Yeah? Oh. I'll hang up first since it's nothing." Sophia hung up the phone with her hands still grasping it, as if she was taken aback. She had planned to tell him that she was going to be engaged, but after giving it some thought, she realized that there was nothing between them. Christopher flew home that night itself and planned to meet with his parents tomorrow at 12 p.m. to discuss the engagement. The York family was eager to help with debt payback. Drake, on the other hand, found himself in a difficult predicament. To get through this tough period, he had no alternative but to rely on his daughter's marriage. Sophia was well aware of this. No matter how disloyal she was, she couldn't stand by and watch her father being arrested. Therefore, now that the York family had indicated that they were willing to marry her and assist in paying off the debt, she was very grateful. Over at Arthur's villa, Emily had just returned from downtown in her new dress. She couldn't wait to show it to Arthur and walked straight to the study on the second floor. "Artie, do you like my new dress?" she said as she turned around in front of him. Arthur wore a black shirt with embroidered designs on them, but the sense of dignity that was inherently present in his physique was always obvious to the public. "Well, it's beautiful," he complimented her. Emily, on the other hand, saw that he only gave her a passing glance and did not appear to be impressed in any way. "You are being perfunctory to me," she said, rather disappointed. Her mood appeared to have improved during Sophia's absence throughout these 3 days, but whenever Sophia was around, Emily always felt suffocated. She discovered that Arthur preferred to be alone. When he had nothing to do, he would read books in the study room or work, but she never saw him taking the initiative to ask her out. Each time she asked him about it, he would always refuse her. "Arctic, is there something on your mind? You can talk to me about it." Emily sat beside him and hugged his arm as she looked at him with doe eyes. "No," Arthur shook his head. Then, she pursed her lips and asked, "Are you thinking about Sophia?" Hearing this, he raised his beautiful eyebrows and answered again, "No." How could he possibly miss her? Anyway, she couldn't escape until she returned his family heirloom. At 9:30 p.m., Anastasia accompanied her son into the room and helped him take a bath before changing into his adorable cartoon pajamas. Jared's wet hair was combed to the side, revealing his handsome and delicate little face, making him look like a young prince. "Jared, it's your birthday soon. Think about what you want as your present," she said. "Will you give me anything I want?" the little guy asked slyly. "Yes, I will." She would, of course, do anything for him. Then, Jared smiled and requested, "Okay, then. I'll tell you what I want for my birthday. I want a brother and sister for my birthday present." When Anastasia heard this, she kept quiet for a few seconds before bursting into laughter. "I can't give you that by your birthday. I'm not in a rush for it, Mommy. You can give them to me for my birthday present next year." This made her sigh softly. She knew that her son was a little lonely. She gently stroked his little head and said, "Choose another gift. Let Mommy think about this one for a bit." The little guy immediately asked for another set of Legos, and she pulled him into a hug and kissed his head. "Okay, I'll get that for you." After tucking Jared to bed, Anastasia returned to her room, picked up a briefcase from the couch, and looked through the documents. Elliot had a social gathering tonight, so she had to wait for him to return. At about 11 p.m., she heard the sound of a car, and soon, a handsome figure stepped through the door. The black suit and pants gave him a stylish yet domineering look. He looked like he had just stepped out of a magazine. "Why are you still looking through documents?" Elliot sat down and took the documents from her hands before continuing distressingly, "It's late. Stop working." At this moment, Anastasia took a whiff of him. "You reek of alcohol. How much did you drink?" "I didn't drink much. I'll take a shower." He did not want the smell to rub off on her. Although he didn't drink much, the room reeked with the smell of alcohol and it absorbed into his clothes. Lying in bed, Anastasia suddenly thought of her son's birthday wish earlier. Because of the pain she had experienced during childbirth, she was under a lot of pressure. If she were to have another child, it was inevitable that she would have to experience what she endured again. However, the kins of the Presgrave were phasing out. Thus, she was still burdened with the task of continuing their bloodline. Before she could think more about it, she saw Elliot walking out with a bath towel. His sculpted and muscular body shone under the light, filling her with. As he lay in bed and took her into his arms, Anastasia couldn't help but tell him about her son's wish. "The decision is yours to make. I won't force you." He leaned in to kiss her head. "I'm fine with just Jared." Then, Anastasia raised her head slightly and asked, "Have you ever thought about having another child?" "I've thought about it. I wanted a daughter so that she could be as beautiful as you." Elliot curled his lips into a smile. How could he not want another child? However, he was afraid that she would have to go through the pain of childbirth again, and he couldn't bear it. She was curious as well. If she were to have a daughter, would the child look like Anastasia or Elliot? Then, he stretched his hand slightly and looked over at her in surprise. "Honey, why didn't you tell me?" Anastasia immediately snorted. "Don't you keep track of the days? How dare you ask me to tell you?" "Of course, I won't." In a blink of an eye, he pulled her into his arms with force. "You little devil, are you trying to starve your husband?" This was a good enough reason for him to punish her, but soon, Elliot was a little annoyed. "I forgot to buy them. I'll call Ray Dash." Just as Elliot was about to get up, Anastasia reached out to hug his neck. "Then, we don't have to use it." He immediately understood what she meant and was taken by surprise. Then, he kissed her gently and asked in a hoarse voice, "Sweetheart, are you sure?" "I am." She had promised Jared, so she decided to try and see if she could fulfill his wish of giving him a sister on his birthday next year. At the break of dawn, Arthur suddenly had the urge to visit Sophia's father after waking up. After all, he had nothing better to do. Deciding that he wanted it to be a surprise, he did not inform her about it. He used other means to get information about Drake's whereabouts. After all, the Goodwins company was in his hands. To avoid Emily, Arthur left at about 10 a.m. to drive directly to the hospital since his bodyguard had bought him a gift in advance, so he drove directly to the hospital. At the hospital, Drake and the rest of his family were just at the entrance as his driver was on the way to bring them to a restaurant for lunch. As Drake couldn't walk, he was pushed out in a wheelchair. At this moment, a pickup truck drove up toward them and the man who stepped out was Christopher coming to pick Sophia up. At 5 feet 7 inches, he weighed nearly 200 pounds in sportswear and his body looked plumper than ever. His chin and neck were almost touching each other, but this did not stop him from liking beautiful women at all. He and Sophia were classmates from junior high until they were in university. She had always been the it girl since she was young as she was beautiful. Thus, Christopher had always been dreaming of getting her. As for Sophia's parents, they hoped that she would be taken care of for the rest of her life. Although he was a little plump, he came from a wealthy family, so their daughter would be able to live a prosperous life in the future. "Dad, Mom, let Uncle G take you to the restaurant first. We'll meet you there in a bit," Sophia said. "All right, we'll get going then." Then, she followed Christopher into his car where he immediately acted like a gentleman. "Sophia, today is a great day for us. Come, let's get a gift for you." "Let us go eat first," she deflected. She did not want anything from him. "You're going to be my wife soon, and it's only right for me to give you a gift." Then, he drove her straight to the jewelry store. Although she had repeatedly refused the offer, he still tried to force a diamond ring on her finger. Ultimately, she had no choice but to wear it on her ring finger. This made him grin so widely that his triple chin was on full display. "Sophia, you're so beautiful today. Did you know how many boys were after you back in high school?" "Now, I can finally call you mine," he boasted. He had already made up his mind to bribe the media to report their wedding. That way, he would look even more imposing. The most beautiful girl in school was now his wife, which made it extremely wonderful. However, Sophia had no intention of being his trophy wife. She looked at the time and said, "It's time for us to head over to the restaurant." Then, Christopher finally drove them toward the restaurant. In the hospital corridor, a group of young nurses was stunned by the sight of a man in a white shirt, who became the focus of all the women. He was like a protagonist out of a novel, while the two bodyguards made him appear cold and hostile with a domineering aura. Arthur stood at the door of the ward. He stopped outside for a few seconds before he reached out to push open the door, expecting to see Sophia's surprised face. However, the ward was empty. When a nurse passed by, he politely asked the nurse in a charming voice, "Excuse me, has the patient here been discharged?" It just so happened that the nurse happened to be in charge of the ward. "Mr. Goodwin is not discharged yet," she hurriedly answered. "He just went out for lunch. If I'm not wrong, his daughter is getting engaged today." At the sound of this, his dark pupils suddenly shrank. "Engaged?" "Yes, that is correct. According to what I've heard, they will meet the groom's family and discuss the engagement." "Sir, are you related to him?" No, the man kept his composure and gave a quick smile, but as soon as he walked away, his face looked gloomy. How could she not tell him she was going to get engaged? Arthur pulled out his phone and called Sophia's number right away. Sophia was in the car that Christopher was driving. When she heard her phone ring, she pulled it out and checked it. Once she saw who was calling, she immediately ended the call. "Why didn't you answer?" Christopher asked out of curiosity. "It's nothing important." At the hospital lobby, the man couldn't believe that she had just hung up on him. When he thought about that, he gripped the phone even tighter. "Find out where Drake's daughter's engagement is," Arthur ordered his bodyguard behind him. The bodyguard contacted the executive at Goodwin Corporation, who put him in touch with Drake's driver. The driver gave them the address and room number of the restaurant. Arthur then entered the car and calmly said, "Drive to the restaurant." Christopher's car slowly pulled into the restaurant's parking lot during this time. When Sophia got out of the vehicle, he suddenly hugged her. This startled Sophia, so she avoided and told him, "Don't do this. We do not want anyone to see us." "What's the problem?" "After this meal, you will be my wife anyway." He wanted to move in with Sophia so badly right now. Even though they were going to get married in future, she still resisted him deeply. "Fine. At the very least, we should hold hands." Christopher ignored her refusal and forced to take her hand. Sophia had no choice but to follow him inside the restaurant while holding her hand. At the restaurant, Drake and his wife were chatting with the York couple. Since they were both businessmen, this was something that they had in common. Their conversation led to the Goodwin Corporation incident when a hostile acquisition left Drake with no one to turn to when it happened. His business was thriving until there was an unexpected hostile acquisition, which resulted in him owing a significant amount of money to the bank. All of this happened as a result of his daughter losing the heirloom that belonged to a young man. Anyway, the past is the past. "Please look out for us since we will soon be in-laws," Drake added. "Of course. After all, our son is totally crazy about Sophia." Christopher walked in while holding Sophia's hand as they were talking. After taking their seats, the two families began ordering food. In the meantime, Emma was observing her daughter seated next to a plump Christopher. She felt terrible for Sophia since she was unhappy with this engagement. "Sophia, I'll take good care of you in the future. Once you're married to Christopher, please hurry ahead and bless our family with a grandchild. I definitely want to have a grandchild soon." Margaret thought to herself as she looked at Sophia's lovely face. My future grandchildren's genes will definitely be amazing. Why don't we skip the and get straight to the wedding planning? At this point, we are able to discuss the dowry and what should be done with it. We are generous. We have decided to give $2 million. Edmund York had already decided what he will do. We have no demands on the dowry. Everything is fine so long as Sophia is happy. Drake nodded. Edmund had an idea right away. Oh. Drake, how about we help you pay off half of your debt to make things easier and then figure out what to do about the rest? Drake and his wife looked at each other in silence. Because of how things were, they had no other choice as they no longer had any pride left to ask for more. But we also hope you can give something as your part of the wedding gift, Margaret said out of the blue. When Emma heard this, she quickly added, we'll absolutely prepare our side of the wedding gift too. In that case, let's just get right to it. Drake, we are interested in your land. So, we're wondering whether you may make it as your gift for the wedding. Drake and his wife exchanged yet another glance. Our land? However, this land is valued at $50 million on the market. It wasn't that the couple didn't want to give the land as a wedding gift, instead, it was their only remaining possession. Sophia was shocked to hear this and she looked at the York family. They want a piece of land as a wedding gift? Mr. Drake, we'll build a house on that piece of land. We'll bring you two over to stay with us by then. Christopher said. He thought that his family deserved to benefit financially from this marriage. Drake and his wife found themselves in a terrible predicament. They couldn't help but think, we thought that marrying off our daughter would be a joyful occasion, but the wedding gift that the other side is asking for seems ridiculous. Don't tell me you're hesitant to give it up, Drake. Edmund continued in his pursuit. Well, that's not really true. We'll get ready for our part of the wedding gift, but this land is under my father's name. I don't think I have much of a say in this. However, I heard that you inherited the land from him. Certainly, you can make that decision. We also want our children to have a nicer place to live once they marry, wouldn't you agree? You will provide the land, and we will assist in the construction of a villa. In the end, it's for the benefit of our children. Mr. and Mrs. York, I'm not too choosy about where I live. Also, I have my own, so after Christopher and I get married, we can just move into my apartment, Sophia said. An apartment? That can't be right. Christopher can't live in an apartment. We have always given him the best of everything since he was a child. In case you didn't know, Margaret refuted in a strong manner and made it sound like his son was a rare and precious gem. A large black SUV pulled up in front of the restaurant's entrance. The bodyguard stepped out of the vehicle to open the rear passenger seat door. The man's slender and long legs stepped out and he walked right inside the restaurant. Do you have any reservations, sir? We're here to look for someone, his bodyguard answered. Arthur asked, where is the premier room? Oh. This way, sir. The server catered to their needs with enthusiasm. While directing them to the premier room, the waitress could not resist catching a glimpse of the male visitor. He is extremely attractive. Is he a celebrity? At the same time, the atmosphere in the premier room had become a little awkward. The York family was keen about getting that piece of land, but the Goodwin family was in a dilemma. The room's door was pushed open at this moment and the sweet voice of the waitress welcoming someone was heard shortly after. Please enter, sir. The two families turned their heads and glanced at the door in surprise while a noble-looking man entered the room. Sophia was so shocked when she saw the man that she jumped from her seat. Mr. Weiss, why are you here? She asked, looking at the man with bewilderment. Arthur shifted his eyes from the two families in their seats to the plump man next to Sophia. He narrowed his eyes as he thought, Is this the man she's going to marry? Is she blind? This man does not deserve to be with her. When Drake and his wife saw the man, they were shocked as well and would never intentionally upset him. Furthermore, their daughter owed him a family heirloom. As Christopher saw the uninvited guest, something inside his mind warned him to be cautious of this man. So, he rose up and said in an unpleasant tone, "Who are you? Do you not realize that this is a private session? Hurry and leave." When Sophia detected Christopher's unpleasant tone, she hurriedly introduced him to Arthur. "This is my friend, Christopher." "Sophia, what do you think this means? How can you invite a male friend to our engagement party?" Christopher was furious. When he saw that this man was truly exceptional, he became really angry. "No, that's not what it is." She waved her hands to indicate that he had misunderstood. She then reached out her hands to push and drag Arthur toward the door. "Mr. Weiss, why don't we talk about this outside?" Arthur turned around and followed her to the door. Sophia closed the door behind her once they were outside. "Young Master Weiss, why are you here?" she asked, feeling confused. "Are you going to get married to that pig inside there?" He laughed as if he had just seen a joke. An embarrassed Sophia said, "Don't say such rude things about him, will you? Aren't you afraid that he'll squash you?" He didn't pay attention to her and kept making nasty remarks. Her face immediately turned red with embarrassment when she heard that. "Can't this man at least respect me?" "Yes, young Master Weiss. I'm getting engaged soon and no longer can serve you. Please revoke our agreement," she said with a serious expression. She believed that the only way to resolve her father's debt was to sever ties with Arthur. "I disagree. You cannot leave my side for a whole year." He crossed his arms and gave her a harsh glare. Sophia choked when she heard that. Since she was determined to have nothing to do with him, she could only say, "In short, I'm getting engaged. I'm going to get married to someone else. So, all I can say is that from now on, I'll only stay on the side of the man I'm going to marry." "Does your fiancé know about our relationship?" Arthur narrowed his eyes and asked. Sophia's cheeks reddened after hearing this. "Why does he act as if we are having an affair? For goodness sake, we're just friends. Why does he have to complicate our relationship?" Sophia bit her lip and said, "There's nothing between us." At that moment, Sophia didn't notice that someone from inside was opening the door behind her. From the corner of his eye, Arthur could see and even figure out who that person was. So, he unintentionally made himself sound even more ambiguous than before. "Have you forgotten that we used to sleep in the same room? You even saw me naked." Christopher, who had just opened the door and walked out, heard this statement at first instance. Since he was angry, he asked out loud, "Sophia, what is your relationship with him?" His voice took Sophia by surprise and she immediately turned to him and explained, "Christopher, please don't misunderstand. There's nothing between." Suddenly, her face was cupped by two fair and delicate hands. Without giving her time to react, a set of thin, rejuvenating lips kissed her soft lips. This took Sophia completely by surprise. Christopher could only watch as his future fiancé was being kissed by another man. The bodyguard who stood by the side was also surprised as he saw young Master Weiss initiating a kiss with a woman. After kissing Sophia, Arthur flashed a smug look and sneered at Christopher to provoke him. Sophia was dazed and completely stupefied by the kiss until she heard Christopher's angry voice. "Let go of her. She's my girlfriend, and you have no right to touch her." Suddenly, an arm was wrapped around her waist as Christopher finished ranting. She was flattened in an embrace with a cedar-scented chest the next second. "I've touched her, so what are you going to do?" Arthur smirked as he kissed her hair. "Sophia, you ought to think this through. Your father's $10 billion debt will be due soon, and if you are not engaged with me, no one's going to pay for him. He may need to spend at least 3 years in jail if he can't pay up. Christopher was still determined to get Sophia for himself. After all, he'd never give up something he'd never touched before. Just as Sophia was about to push off Arthur, a deep male voice said, "You're willing to marry yourself to this pig for a mere $10 billion? How can you be such a loser?" She had never heard such haughty remarks in her life. Meanwhile, Christopher became enraged when he heard that someone spoke of him as a pig. "You? Then, why don't you try to take out $10 billion in one go?" When he watched Arthur extend out his hand, the bodyguard gave him a black wallet. Arthur withdrew a black card from his wallet and handed it to Sophia. "Take it and use the money to pay off your father's debt. Return to serve me after you've settled it." When Christopher saw it, his eyes widened in amazement. He observed not one, but maybe 6 or 7 black cards in this man's wallet, if he wasn't mistaken. With his current net worth, even he himself was ineligible to upgrade to a black card. Sophia was shocked when she looked at the black card and raised her head. She knew she couldn't accept something like that from him. So, she quickly shook her head and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Weiss. I can't take your card. Let's just ignore him, Sophia. I'm sure he has plans to do something bad. Let's go inside." Christopher then moved toward her and tried to pull her away from Arthur, but Arthur's bodyguard came immediately and stopped Christopher from getting close. Sophia broke free from Arthur's grip on her waist. Then she told him, "Please let go of me." "Thank you." When he heard that, he was a little disappointed. This woman is willing to marry someone else instead of accepting his assistance? Christopher thought it was finally his turn to give Arthur a provoking smirk as Sophia walked toward him. He was shocked by what Sophia was about to say, which came as a surprise. Looking at him, she said, "Christopher, let's cancel our engagement for today. I'm not marrying you." "Why?" He looked at her anxiously. Sophia wasn't a fool. She knew that when the York family asked her to marry Christopher and said they would help her father pay off his debt, it was just empty promises. Out of greed, they even asked for a piece of her parents' land as a wedding gift for her. She had actually thought about it while she was inside the room and wondered whether she could get her parents to sell everything they owned to pay off the debt. She was also willing to stay with her parents in a rental home and accompany them. Moreover, she could also tell that her parents were having trouble deciding what to do about the piece of land. She knew that the York family was using paying off the debt as an excuse to pressure her parents.
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.